All right. I'm going to take that as a sign, Josh, that we are ready to get rolling, that you hit record. So
Got it.
awesome. Thanks so much for being here, everyone. We are thrilled to share with you how you can deepen learning with our KQED Youth Media Challenges today. My name is Tamitha Hoskins, and I am the School District Partnerships Manager here at KQED. Before that, I was a high school English teacher and worked in educational technology for some of the partners you probably work with presently at your district. And with me today, and doing much of the heavy lifting, is my colleague, Rachel Robertson.
Hi, everyone. My name is Rachel Robertson, and I am KQED's Humanities Professional Learning lead. For many years, I taught Humanities Core in middle school, so English and social studies either together or separate. And I've been at KQED for about 7 years now. You see our email addresses here, and we're really excited to be here. At Digital District Day, we obviously love working with SFUSD educators. And so really invite you, if anything's come up and you didn't get a chance to ask the question that you had, just feel free to reach out to us anytime. KQED, as most of you know, is your public media station. We're both a TV and radio station, so we're both a PBS and NPR member station, but we also have an education department that creates resources for you and your students. So for your own professional learning and for your students to make and share media that they can communicate what they've learned or talk about something that's important to them and publish it to a community beyond the classroom. So we do this in a lot of different ways. And if you have the slides, which I really hope you do, all of these are buttons that lead to these resources, but we have both professional learning resources for teachers, so online self-paced courses, and our PBS Media Literacy Educator Certification Program, and also resources for students and classrooms. We'll talk a lot about our Youth Media Challenge in a sec, but if you haven't discovered PBS Learning Media yet, it's Public Media's vast library of resources in PK through 12 across all subject matters. There's many different languages represented, many different types of learning represented. So if you haven't checked that out, definitely recommend that you do that. So again, all of these are buttons that lead to these resources. One of our goals, basically our North Star, the reason that our education department exists, is to elevate diverse youth voices. And that word diverse is doing a lot of heavy lifting in this sentence, but we really do mean it in all the ways. So racial and ethnically diverse, gender, economically, linguistically, geographically, just any kind of diversity. We want to take the voices of youth in our community and give them a place to share what's important to them and what they're learning. So everything that you hear today really rolls up into that kind of mission statement. And so we try to do everything both to support you and to support your students so that this can happen in your classroom in whatever way makes sense for you.
And here's some statistics from our friends over at Common Sense Media. Basically, if you are teaching young people, tweens and teens, they are spending 8+ hours a day consuming media. So if we are serious about being student-centered and want to meet them where they are, well, where they are is consuming media. And we really think about media literacy as a full spectrum, starting from media consumption all the way through media creation. And so that's why we're talking about the Youth Media Challenge today. In addition, we really want to hone in on the fact that media literacy is a standards powerhouse. We think of it like a nutrient-dense food in which you are really hitting not only the content standards for your respective content areas, but also the ISTE standards, NGSS standards, CTE anchor standards, and a slew of many more. So really you can trust that if you're making media in your classroom or teaching media literacy, you are creating rich, deep standards-aligned curriculum. And lastly, we wanted to share, we have a youth advisory board, and there's the teaching reasons for why we want to do this pedagogically, but there's also the impact that it makes for the individual students. And this is a quote from Clara Chu, one of our YAB members, in which she talks about how making media has really helped her to understand her own voice and the impact she makes in the community.
Awesome. So when we think about making media with students and kind of the deeper learning implications there, we kind of touched on some of them, but really one of the reasons is to kind of foster that empathy and connection so that students aren't just kind of passively consuming media, but they are creating it and putting it out there and making their voice heard. It also aligns with all these best practices that we want to bring to classrooms: project-based learning, owner-centered design, deeper learning, connecting that real life that we know that they're living outside our classroom with our classroom, and then building those both media and traditional literacies. We wouldn't say a student was literate if they could read but not write, and we can't say students are media literate if they can consume and analyze and evaluate media but they can't create it themselves, because we know from all of our learning with traditional literacy that the act of creating, composing, putting things together, constructing is really important to build all sorts of literacies. So when you think about your own setting, your students who are coming next week, the students you've had in the past, you know, kind of be thinking about what connects you to media, what kind of made you interested in coming to this session, what reasons for media creation are most aligned with you. And then we just really love this quote, and we can say it at the end of the year, we can say it at the beginning of the year. This is your annual reminder that you can get students to write the longest, most detailed essays of their lives if you disguise it as a script for a video or podcast. And again, that's not manipulating students, but acknowledging that the kind of writing they do as part of the creation process and as part of, you know, thinking about an audience and thinking about constructing messages that they want to share is powerful. And students will do a lot of work around that kind of learning. Some of you are in sort of upper elementary grades when you're introducing yourself, and you know, maybe they don't need as much motivation, but building these habits I think are important to start thinking about how we can bring that to classrooms. So for you personally, and we want you to like drop this into the chat, what kind of are you most feeling connected with when you think about either media projects you've done with students or media projects you hope to do with students? So put a 1 if it's that, you know, empathy, connection, student voice, a 2 if you're thinking about all the ways to bring those learner-centered best practices, or a 3 if you're thinking about both that connection of traditional and media literacy. So just drop that in the chat so we can see where folks are. Awesome. I feel like this Zoom is set up so no one can see anyone else's responses. I feel like I'm getting direct messages to me, which I guess is the setting for today, which is sad. But folks are putting 3, they're putting 1, drop in some other. All chat is DM sadness. I wish we could all see what everyone else is doing. That's how we designed it. So sorry about that. So folks are weighing in with 1s and 3s mostly, or the combination thereof. And we really invite you to think about that context and where you're coming from in terms of how you want to approach, you know, media literacy in your class. Great. I'm just going to ask folks to mute if you're not on mute. I can't mute you, unfortunately. Maybe Josh, you can mute someone. Great. Thank you so much. All right. So folks are continuing to share. And we're going to move in. So bring sort of that mindset into what you're going to hear about the Youth Media Challenge projects. But when we think about making space for media, there's other things to consider. So you might have activities or projects you already do that are writing centered. As we already sort of hinted at, those really translate well into media projects because you're already having students compose and construct messages. So it's, you know, bringing that into the media space through video or audio or images is something that's kind of already set up and you already have brewing in your classroom. Or you can think about how media is used authentically in your field or subject area. So how do writers, you know, authentically use video or audio? How do historians or artists or scientists, right? So things like audio field notes or historical site guides, you know, audio guides that you get when you go to a museum or a site, you know, oral histories or ethnographies. If you teach, you know, world languages, pronunciations, vocabulary, right? There's so many different things. There's so many different ways that media is used authentically, both in learning, but also in the world around us. So that's another way to connect media to your subject area and something to think about. So we want to share with you about KQED's Youth Media Challenge, which is a project. It has 3 projects actually that invite students to share their voice with an authentic audience, and it's built on things you're already doing with students in your classroom. So we have 3 Youth Media Challenge projects. If you're familiar with the Youth Media Challenge from previous years, nothing has gone away, but things have sort of rolled up into 3 genre-based categories. So our Call for Change challenge has not changed. It is a commentary challenge that invites students to choose an issue that matters to them, and then create a video, audio, or editorial cartoon around that issue and share their views. We have the first person challenge, which is a personal narrative challenge. We'll talk a little bit about how you might want to start the year with a first person youth media challenge. Again, students are invited in video, audio, or graphic format to share something about themselves, a lesson, a value, a passion. And then the Show What You Know is an informational media project. And again, students are invited to talk about something they've learned that they're really interested in, something they know how to do that they want to share. And then they have 3 choices, both a video, audio, or a graphic-based or image-based way to show what they know. If you're familiar with the Perspectives Youth Media Challenge and have done that in the past, that's the first person challenge, audio essay. That's essentially what that is. And so none of our previous challenges, if you're familiar or have heard about them, have gone away, but they've all sort of rolled up into these 3 genre categories with the media types kind of across all the different projects. So there's always a video option, there's always an audio option, there's always an image or graphic-based option. So what we'd like for you to do, and I am going to, Tam's going to put this in the chat, but I'm also just going to go back and show you what the site looks like, because we also have revamped the site. So it's really that it welcomes you with a map. So you can see, I mean, you can see in the Bay here, it's very dense, dense submissions from all over the Bay, including, of course, the city and SFUSD, and all over the country. Students are sharing their voice through this challenge. And so it's great for our students to share their voice, but it's also great for them to be able to encounter the voices of other students in different regions and areas, kind of see what they're thinking about, see where they have commonalities, see where they might have differences, right? So there's lots of different options for students to investigate. And then the challenges are all here. Each challenge has lots of resources, a toolkit, and curriculum for students in both English and Spanish. And then our showcase just launched like this week. It is beautiful and updated. We now have really robust tagging, so you can search by type of media or topic. There's really great display where students, maybe they've done a cartoon, maybe they've done a video or a podcast, and then you can search. And you can see we have lots and lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of options. So lots of ways to explore. We actually want to give you, because this is so new, we would like to give you a little bit of time to explore. So what I'm going to do is set this timer for 3 minutes, and Tam has dropped a link to the site into the chat. Why don't you just click on it and just kind of poke around. You can explore and find the projects, read a little bit about that. You can listen to youth media or view youth media on the showcase from other parts of the country. You can check out the student resources in any of the projects. So just take about a couple minutes and explore, and we're going to come back and kind of debrief very briefly. But some things to think about are what elements of the showcase might be useful to you, and what do you notice or wonder? So what questions might come up? What things might you be wondering once you do your investigation? So go poke around since it's brand new, and we'll come back in about 2.5 minutes. Any questions in the meantime, just pop them in the chat. All right, we got a little over 30 seconds left. If you are still diving in and looking, feel free to continue, but no, we're going to come back in about 30 seconds. And even though other people can't see the chat, if you just have any questions or noticing or wonderings, or elements that come to mind that you wouldn't mind dropping in the chat so we can get some immediate feedback, that'd be great. But also keep looking, and we'll come back in about 15 seconds. All right, if anyone has any feedback or noticing, wonderings, or questions, please go ahead and drop them in the chat. Again, we sort of planned this to be a little more discussion based, so it's hard that folks can't see each other's chats. So we'll just move on, but would love for folks to pop in anything that, and we will read them out loud and share it with the group. Just go ahead and do that. Great, Bradley writes, love the podcast. Excellent, so many peer examples, right? So many exemplars of student work, and so many ways for students to see what other folks around the country are thinking and doing, or students in the Bay in their own community. Thank you for sharing that, Bradley. Other thoughts, noticings, wonderings? If anyone got a chance to check out the curriculum, the teacher toolkits. All right, definitely keep popping those thoughts in, and we're going to continue on. So the Youth Media Challenge can be modified for any grade level, but the submission and the showcase is open to middle and high school students throughout the entire school year. So there's no deadline. You are the ones that choose the deadline for the challenge, because you know where it best fits into your curriculum or learning goals. So we have the 3 genre buckets: personal narrative, commentary, informational, again, that center student voice and builds those traditional and media literacy skills. The curriculum is all Google Docs. So you just make your own copy, you make it your own, you know your students more than we do. But there's a lot to get you started. And so the teacher toolkit for each project has lots and lots and lots of classroom slides, as well as like student handouts, rubrics, checklists, kind of everything to get you going. And all student-facing resources are in English and Spanish. This is not a contest. This is a challenge. It's challenging to put your voice out there. It's a step. It's a step that we want our students to take to build positive digital footprints, right? And get their portfolios going. And so it's a positive challenge, but it is a challenge. So all student work is published as it is submitted. We review everything, but everything goes up on the showcase. We're not gatekeepers for Youth Voice. We want to elevate it. Some voices are selected to be broadcast on our airwaves or on our digital channels. We'll let you know before that happens. That will not be a surprise or a shock to anyone. But we do want all students to have the opportunity to publish their voice and to encounter the voices of other youth. So that's kind of the basics of that. And you know, when you think about the process, all of the sort of media projects follow the same kind of process. So the first person personal narrative is, you know, students choose that, you know, whatever personal narrative prompt, and they write a script and they record an audio essay or create a short film, and then they publish to the showcase. So this is an example. We're going to play an example from Lincoln High of an audio essay that your students might want to write and submit. And if you're familiar again with the Perspective series, those are voice only audio essays, but they're still audio essays. So any Perspectives projects that you've done in the past, it's the audio essay project. So let's hear from Kenny and the audio essay that he created.
From KQED.
Our next story is from a youth journalist, Kenny Yang, who also attends Lincoln High School in San Francisco, and he's going to tell us about his newfound passion, which happens to be in the kitchen.
A new craft that I learned was cooking. I never really wanted to cook because I'm kind of lazy and I only enjoy eating the food, not cooking. But I decided to give cooking a shot. Before I started to cook, I watched some cooking videos on YouTube. Some of the videos I watched were how to make a California burrito.
I'm gonna make the French fries. It's one of the key ingredients in the California burritos.
And how to make eggs Benedict.
We'll begin by making hollandaise sauce. First, separate 4 eggs.
These videos I watched showed a step-by-step process, which made cooking look easy. But I knew it wasn't going to be that simple. I started off by making some extremely hot and spicy ramen noodles for my friends to try. A couple weeks later, it was the day before Thanksgiving, so me and my friends had a Friendsgiving party. It was the perfect opportunity for me to show off my new skills. My friends were in charge of the fried chicken, and the only one in charge of the mashed potatoes was myself. The mashed potatoes I was making weren't just any mashed potatoes. It was a recipe by BuzzFeed, how to make the creamiest mashed potatoes. Not gonna lie, mashing these potatoes really got me sweating. The instructions were to push the potatoes through a fine mesh sieve, but I didn't have one of those, and I also didn't have a potato masher, so I had to use a fork to finally mash all 6 pounds of boiled potatoes. But after adding the butter and heavy cream, the mashed potatoes actually came out pretty tasty, along with some beef gravy I made out of beef stock. Then the week after, I invited my friends over again to taste my latest creation, Supreme Nachos. When my friends tried this dish, they were just starstruck by the amount of flavor in the marinated beef. Now I can proudly say that cooking is one of my greatest passions. For the California Report, I'm Kenny Yang.
All right, so that was a great example of an audio essay. Again, like a passion that a student had that he wanted to share. He added soundscape and music and a few clips and really brought it to life. One of my favorite comments about this piece is that if it had been a written text, he could have come across as kind of like, I don't know, like when he opens up by saying like, hey, I don't like anything. I don't like to cook because I'm lazy. That could like maybe read a little off if you were just reading it on the page, but hearing Kenny's voice, hearing the delight that he takes in sharing his cooking creations with his friends and with us, really that kind of audio connection that we get from hearing his voice really brings his story to life. And so that's an example of an audio essay. Again, it doesn't have to be, your deepest, darkest secrets that you reveal, but it is definitely a way to give students a chance to share something about themselves in a new way. So any other thoughts about this, just go ahead and drop it in the chat. But because of the way it's set up, I know it's not very interactive for folks to do that. So these are some other audio examples of students who kind of have done audio essays across the board. Talking about future goals, talking about hardships they've overcome, talking about lessons they've learned or things that have made them change their minds about themselves or the world around them. So lots of different mentor texts here that we've kind of curated for you, but on the showcase you saw, there are so many more to find. These are some short film examples. In all of these short films, students use kind of movement as well as narration to talk about something that's important to them or something they believe or value about themselves, or send a message of encouragement to others. So those are also great to check out, but there's lots of ways to do narrative short film or personal narrative short film as well. So the call for change, students choose an issue, they write a persuasive commentary, which of course combines both personal experience or personal anecdotes with evidence and reasoning that they've researched. In a commentary, what a student believes and how they've encountered the issue is an important part of the evidence, but it's not the only evidence. They also do some research to support their claim, and then create an audio or video piece or an editorial cartoon, and then publish to the showcase. So this is a video commentary example about something that I feel like affects all of our lives. So let's watch this video commentary.
Chances are, at some point this past week, you have been in a car commuting to work, school, or driving to stores. If not, you're most likely crossing car-filled streets while walking or biking instead. It's immediately obvious that we are all dependent on cars. Of course, we want to get to our destinations the fastest and safest way possible, but cars cause much more problems than they solve. We'll be explaining what makes us so seemingly dependent on cars, how much they really harm us, and what we can do to get that fast and comfortable commute in a world that doesn't rely on cars. In the US, there are 868 cars for every 1,000 people, and 59.8% of one-way household car rides are less than 6 miles, and 95% were 30 miles or less, according to energy.gov. We are using cars with only 1 to 2 people inside to travel fairly small distances. Think about all of the traffic before and after school, and how the parking lot at Trader Joe's is always full. Our cities have become centered around cars because of how much we use them, like big wide roads are even common in small towns. Anyone who attends events like farmers markets knows how much can fit on these big roads when they're not being used for cars.
Massive multi-level parking lots are built in big shopping areas, taking up a huge amount of space that could be used for more stores or even housing, according to Sightline.org. Besides taking up space, our cars cause a lot more serious issues for us. When thinking about harm caused by cars, the first thing that comes to your mind is probably car accidents. Unfortunately, the amount of car accidents are rising, with a 13% increase in pedestrian deaths in 2021, according to the NHTSA. And I'm sure everyone is aware of the air pollution that comes directly from cars. Air pollution caused by cars account for 27% of the total U.S. greenhouse gas emissions, according to the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. This makes cars the largest contributor of pollutants in the U.S. We have to start transitioning our cities into places better fit for the use of the public transportation and other modes of transit like walking or biking, so we no longer have to use cars. While it may seem impossible to take cars away from a city like LA, it's already being done in other countries. Big cities like Paris are already making this transition with seemingly successful results. We need to be supporting change that provides funding towards making our roads safe for us and our future. Support better street safety efforts in your area, and support funding and building more bus stops, train stations, and more ways for people to travel shorter distances without cars.
Awesome. So you could see in that video commentary example, the way that they used really relatable experiences like traffic jams in front of schools and the Trader Joe's parking lot to illustrate, some of the things that we know are true about cars, in addition to traffic and road deaths and all that kind of stuff. And then really used images that they had found. So it didn't look like any of those images were footage that they had taken, but they collected maybe within the video tool and put them together in a way that really illustrated their point and got it across. So both their own experiences and experiences they knew would be relatable to the audience, as well as evidence and facts that they had researched, putting it together to make a case around using more public transportation and making cities better for biking and walking. So that's a great example of a video commentary. But as you probably have guessed by now, we have lots of examples of audio commentaries. This one, Trash Yard, is from an SNUSD site. And these are examples from actually all over Northern California, but lots of different ways that students have chosen issues that matter to them and have shared their voice in a way that they want to communicate that issue to someone else. Here are some more examples of video commentaries. And these are some editorial cartoons. So students talking about, debt, student debt, the environmental costs of COVID, and conspiracy theories and how they affect the government. So there's so many different issues that we see even represented in our mentor texts, and your students, will have issues that matter to them. So that's just an example of commentary. And then our informational media projects show what you know. Basically, students take anything that they've learned or that they're interested in, something that fascinates them, something they want to communicate to others, and they research and create a plan to make media around it, create a mini documentary or a podcast or an infographic, and then publish that on the showcase. So we're going to see this very cute mini documentary on milk. Like, what milk should you choose when you go to the grocery store? There are so many options these days, and what kind of to think about. I personally have learned a ton from this middle school science example, which I think they recorded in Scratch Junior or made the animations, and then I used WeVideo to kind of put all the footage together. So again, not big inaccessible tools, but tools that you maybe have access to in your classroom that students maybe are already using. So let's learn about milk and their effects on the environment.
If you've ever gone to milks and their effects on the environment, If you've ever gone to the grocery store, you've probably seen plant-based milks. The leading types are cow's, almond, soy, and oat milk. They all have great nutritional value, so when choosing which milk to drink, the question becomes more about the impact on the climate. Freshwater shortages due to droughts is something that we're experiencing now. For 1 liter, cow's milk requires 628 liters of water. On the other hand, oat and soy require fairly little at 48 and 28 liters of water. Almond milk requires 371 liters of water. Land usage is also a deciding factor in a product's climate impact. For 1 liter of milk, cow's milk requires 9 square meters of land to create. Oat milk requires approximately 0.9 square meters of land to produce. On the other hand, soy milk requires about 0.7 square meters of land to create. And almond milk requires around 0.5 square meters of land. Soy production is not a direct cause of deforestation. Pasture area is. Soy production has an indirect impact on deforestation as it is replacing pasture areas in South America. Trees are carbon sinks and slow the effects of climate change. Depending on your location or dietary restrictions, oat and soy milk is probably your best option because of the significantly less use of water and land. You've seen the advantages and disadvantages of different types of milk. And hopefully next time you go to the grocery store, you'll put more thought into your choice of drink.
So I don't know if you learned something, I definitely learned something. So that's a great example of using media to communicate something that they've learned about the environment. This teacher taught a big unit on climate change. So all the sorts of 8th grade science, I think it was 8th grade science class related to climate change, and then asked students to choose any topic related to climate change or anything that they wanted to investigate further around climate change. And so students did lots of different types of projects related to climate change within the classroom following that unit of study. So there's also some great informational podcast examples. Here's, again, a huge range, the history of the paper crane, some sort of reflections on 9/11. This is a great, I know we have some science teachers here. This is an interview with an organ where the liver makes an appearance on late night TV, and the host interviews the liver on her functions and where she is in the body and what her typical day is like. So a great way to talk about parts of the body and human systems. Anyway, it's so funny. So check that out. And then here are some more mini documentary examples and some infographic examples. So lots of opportunities for students to show what they know using media, share what they've learned. So even though no one else can see what you've written, we would love to see what you've written and we will share it. And so of the pieces that we've heard today, we'd love for folks to think about the strength of the piece as a video or audio piece rather than text or another type of media. So you can kind of think about that. You can also think about what kinds of things viewing or listening to these examples have made you think about in terms of your own context, to sort of kind of share your thinking with others here so we can all kind of work together and inspire others. So drop that, sort of think about that right now. I'm just going to pause for about 30 seconds. We'd love for you to share it in the chat, but if you don't want to, that's fine, but kind of take a minute to think about that now, and then we'll move on. You're also more than welcome to uncover your mic and share out loud. We have about 10 more seconds. Great, Bradley writes, I haven't seen a video before, didn't know that was available. So great, awesome. Thanks for that reflection. Alrighty, so take that thinking into some ideas for back to school. So one of the things that a lot of us do when we go back to school and meet our new students is to do some sort of get to know you activity or connection activity. So the first person Youth Media Challenge project could be a really great way to start off the year and do that by helping students get to know each other, laying down some foundational media making practices that you might want to continue in your class throughout the year with other projects, and giving students a way to communicate in the way that they might feel more comfortable. So rather than standing up in front of the class and saying something, or even sort of doing a connection in a more informal way, to maybe record something and share it that way, or use images that they probably have available to them and bring those images in and kind of share parts of themselves with you and their classmates. So this project really puts the focus on student voice and choice, because you're asking them to share something about themselves, something that they care about. So it strengthens those relationships. Again, lays the foundation for a lot of classroom practices kind of throughout the year and routines. And then it's a way for them to sort of use peer and teacher models to get inspired and engage their creativity. So of course, if you were going to have students do a first person audio essay or a short film or a photo essay, you would also create one yourself and share it with them to get the ball rolling. And then students would be able to learn and share with each other. One of the ways that I like to think about first person narrative projects is kind of the prompt and how the prompt invites students in. So, you can just say like, tell us something about yourself, which is a great prompt, or you might have one that you already use in another format, which is also great. But there are also ways to sort of bring out kind of some media storytelling conversations with the choice of prompt. So, if the students you think are maybe going to go more towards a video than a podcast, you might want to think about some image-rich prompts, right? Or a photo essay, right? So what places or what place do you appreciate in your community, right? Or what's an artifact from your family or an artifact from your past, or, something that you have that's really important to you. And why is that thing important? Or what are some things that are important to your family or your tradition or your culture or yourself, right? So that really like evokes, images and allows folks to actually show their artifact or show the place in their community that they appreciate, or show something about themselves. And then there's also sound rich prompts, right? Like, what's a song that means a lot to you and why, right? What type of music do you like? What kinds of things do we listen to when you get upset or frustrated, right? What do we need to know about what you like, what kind of music you like, or what kind of sounds you like, or what kinds of things that maybe you remember, or what advice from a family member do you want to share with everyone else? And that family member could actually be saying what they would want to share, right? So there's lots of different ways to think about either image rich or sound rich prompts to get students thinking about the media type as well as the project itself. And then all of them should be accessible and personal, but not too personal, right? So students can enter in however it is they choose to. So if they want to kind of reveal their whole heart and put it out on their sleeve, like some kids love to do, that's great. If they're like, no, I just want to talk about cooking and how I made ramen and mashed potatoes for my friends, also great, right? So that they have a way to enter into the project without feeling like, oh, there's a pressure, the pressure is on to share, or this is not that interesting because I don't have that much to share. So these are just some ideas. Again, you all have things that you are also do, but thinking about ways to bring media in from the beginning. And then again, these are sort of our audio essay mentor text with some additions, but these are kind of examples connected to a prompt. So this is a great mentor text about a life lesson, a student reflecting on something that they learned and kind of how they've moved on from that. These are both students. One of them is an SFUSD student talking about overcoming challenges or fears that they've had. And then there's a young woman reflecting on it, how she's changed her mind over time about something. And then Saul here is reflecting on a future goal that he wants for himself, right? So these are great examples to show students, as well as, of course, making one of your own to lead the way. And again, these are some examples of short films, first-person short films by prompt. So this woman, Kennedy, has a message that she wants to share about how she lives her life. This young woman is sharing a passion or a skill that she has. One of our colleagues, Angel, talked about her community and places that she liked in her community through a video. And then a teacher that we work with does an artifact project where students show artifacts that are important to them or their families. So these are all examples to get you started. And then this is a basic flow of any media project, but this is first person. Again, you have the slides, so feel free to make your own copies, share them, do what you want with them. But you always kind of do what we've done. You listen and analyze examples so students know kind of what they're expected to do, but then they can also kind of critique it, kind of look at it, see how what appeals to them, what maybe doesn't appeal to them, maybe what they would do differently. Then you brainstorm, draft a script, get that feedback, record the script, gather all your media together, put it together, and maybe a tool like WeVideo or a tool like, any tool, right? Adobe Express, like basically any video tool, and then upload to Google Drive. That works best with SFUSD, but please make sure that students open permission to everyone can view, or you'll get so many emails from us. And then they can publish and share their voice, or not, and just share it with you. So when it's time to publish, it's whether you're doing call for change or any of them, submissions are open again all year. So you can do this all year. And then all student work is published as it is submitted. Again, we review everything, but it's up. And usually you review everything. So we're not worried. We don't really have a problem with inappropriate content. And then if we want to elevate a youth voice to broadcast, we reach out and get permissions, and everyone knows what's what. What you do to submit is that you create an account on the showcase. So students don't create accounts. We don't want them to. Please do not let them. You create an account and get a code. And then the students use that code when they submit. We have step-by-step instructions, a template. We have all this kind of thing. But they submit with your code, and then what's displayed on the showcase is their first name and last initial, and their district. So there's lots of, their privacy is protected, but we do want them to use their real name, both for their own digital footprint, but also in the way that they choose to use this piece. But also we don't want to invade their privacy. All submissions need a short artist or producer statement. So students talking about kind of putting their media in context, which is kind of a pro thing that happens. There's also citations. There's lots of different things that they can do to present their media. And I think, that was not a question. The slides have all of these links to the templates and everything that we've set up to get y'all going. And then there are lots of reasons that you wouldn't want to stop with the showcase. So once students are published to the showcase, they kind of have their own page on the showcase, and it has a unique URL that goes right to their piece, right to their producer statement, right to their transcript if they choose to upload it, right to their citations, right? It looks very professional. And so there's lots of ways that they can then use that to make their voice heard. So maybe if they're doing a call for change, they want to send it to the principal or send it to the school board or send it to the mayor. Maybe they want to connect with a community group or enter an actual contest, right? Or submit, use it in their portfolio, or submit it for a, film festival or a program that they want to get into, right? So there's lots of different ways that students would publish to the showcase, and then not stop there, take their piece and connect with other folks around it. So I'm done talking, finally. I would love to hear from you if you have any questions about the Youth Media Challenge or anything that you've heard today. Go ahead and uncover your mic. You can drop it in the Q&A box, or you can drop it in the chat. Either way works. All right, so if you have any questions, you can connect with us. We also wanted to point out KQED Teach is our site for teacher professional learning. So if you've heard about that and you're like, that's great, sounds good, but I actually have no idea where to start myself with making media, so how am I going to bring it to students? And if you're feeling that way, it's totally understandable and very normal. And KQED Teach is a site where we have free self-paced courses, which means you can like join anytime, take them at your own pace, all that really go through all the various elements of media making that are reflected in the challenge. So if you want to learn how to make photo essays, if you want to learn how to make infographics, if you want to learn how to make videos or podcasts or any kind of media type, there's a course for you on the site. And we also have some evaluating and analyzing media courses around that aspect of media literacy. You can earn some CEUs for completing them. I know we work with SFUSD, so you might also get other incentives, but there's lots of different ways to connect. And I know that we have science teachers on here, and there's a new communicating with media in science class course that has some really great ideas as well. So check out KQED Teach. If you're at the point where you're just like, this is great, but where do I go from here? Everything we do obviously is free. We are your public media station, and we really want to make sure that you have the resources you need to bring media to your students. We also have some more online workshops coming up. If you just want more of this kind of stuff, we get really hands-on in our workshops. We have not been able to get hands-on in this amount of time. We actually have a workshop on infographics later in Digital District Day at 1 o'clock, which is more of like a workshop making session. If you want to actually make some infographics today, come on by at 1 o'clock. We will be there. But if you don't have time, you have something else, we have another one tomorrow. And then we have some source evaluation workshops and a whole workshop on copyright, which is a pretty good skill to build as you're making media with students. And finally, we are real people, and now you know we are. So we hope you keep in touch. We hope you reach out with questions. You have the slides. Please feel free to make a copy and make them your own and use them in any way that you see fit. So we were hoping that we'd have more discussion, but we're not set up for discussion today, which is totally fine. So we're going to end a little early. But if anyone has any questions just for us, please feel free to stay on and we have some time to answer them. Otherwise, have a wonderful rest of your district day. And yes, give feedback on the session. Josh just put that feedback form in the chat. So you have some time to fill that out right away before you go on to your next session. Take care, everyone, and have a wonderful rest of the school year. All right, if there's no more questions, Josh, I guess we'll peace out.